Have you ever stood at the top of the world and realized there was nowhere left to climb? That was the question haunting Adrian Mercer as he stared through the towering glass walls of his penthouse. Below him, the city glittered like a field of diamonds scattered across the darkness. Streams of headlights flowed through the streets. Towering buildings pierced the night sky. Everything looked powerful. Everything looked perfect. Yet none of it touched the emptiness growing inside him. He stood barefoot on the cold marble floor, holding a crystal glass of whiskey. The ice had already melted. The drink was watered down. Somehow, that felt fitting. Years ago, this view had represented victory. Every light below had reminded him how far he had come. Now it felt like a beautiful prison. Gold bars were still bars. Luxury could still feel lonely. Behind him, laughter drifted through the penthouse. Music pulsed softly from hidden speakers. The scent of expensive perfume mixed with aged wine and polished wood. Every detail of the evening had been planned with precision. Influential guests filled every room. Successful people smiled at one another. Conversations flowed effortlessly. Everything appeared flawless. Adrian lifted the glass and took a slow sip. The taste barely registered. The problem was not the whiskey. The problem was the growing realization that he felt absolutely nothing. "There you are." The familiar voice broke through his thoughts. He did not need to turn around. He already knew who it was. Vanessa stepped beside him, elegant and graceful. Her designer gown shimmered beneath the lights. Her smile was beautiful. Her appearance was flawless. She rested a hand lightly on his arm. "You have been hiding out here all evening," she said. Adrian looked back toward the city. "My party is inside, right?" "Of course it is," she replied. "Everyone came for you." Those words landed harder than she intended. Everyone came for you. Not because they cared, not because they loved him, because he was valuable, because he was useful, because being near him elevated their own importance. Adrian turned and studied her face. "Tell me something," he said quietly. Vanessa blinked. "What is it?" "If I lost everything tomorrow, would you still be here?" For a moment, her expression shifted, only for a moment, then the smile returned. "That is a strange question. I am serious." She laughed softly. "Why would you even think about that?" "Because I want an answer." A brief silence settled between them. Vanessa looked away before meeting his eyes again. "You are not going to lose everything," she said. "Men like you always stay on top." Adrian nodded slowly. That was not an answer. It was an avoidance, a strategy, a calculation. He gently removed her hand from his arm. "I should get back to the guests," she said. "You should." She walked away without another word. Adrian watched her disappear into the crowd. Confidence returned to her posture almost immediately. She blended back into the sea of wealthy faces, ambitious smiles, and carefully crafted relationships. The city remained in front of him. Silent. Unmoved. Honest. Inside, the party grew louder. An hour later, Adrian finally stepped away from the windows. The reaction was immediate. Conversations paused, heads turned, people smiled. A businessman hurried toward him. "Adrian, there you are." The man shook his hand enthusiastically. "I was just talking about your latest acquisition. Incredible move. Absolutely brilliant." "Thank you," Adrian replied. The man continued speaking excitedly. He praised Adrian's strategy. He praised his intelligence. He praised his success. Nobody mentioned the hundreds of employees who had lost their jobs during the deal. Those details never appeared in compliments. Only the profits mattered. Only the victory mattered. Adrian listened politely. He had heard variations of the same conversation thousands of times. Nothing surprised him anymore. Across the room, a group of women glanced toward him. They whispered, they laughed, they looked again. He recognized the expression immediately. It was not curiosity. It was opportunity. The realization exhausted him. As the night continued, Adrian moved through the crowd like a visitor attending someone else's event. He shook hands, he nodded politely, he offered practiced smiles, yet inside he felt disconnected from everything around him. The music became louder, the laughter became louder, the emptiness became louder too. Near midnight, his personal assistant approached. Marcus was efficient, disciplined, and always composed. "Sir," he said quietly. Adrian turned. "What is it?" The board members have arrived. They are waiting in the private lounge. Adrian closed his eyes briefly. Even tonight. Especially tonight. Give me 5 minutes, he said. Marcus nodded. A few moments later, Adrian entered the private lounge. The atmosphere changed instantly. The laughter disappeared. The smiles became sharper. 4 powerful executives sat around a glass table. These were not party guests. These were men who shaped industries. They discussed investments. They discussed expansion. They discussed risk. They discussed numbers so large that most people could not imagine them. Millions, billions, entire futures decided in a single conversation. Adrian participated flawlessly. His mind remained sharp. His analysis remained precise. His authority remained unquestioned. From the outside, he looked unstoppable. Inside, something was breaking. When the meeting finally ended, one executive leaned back in his chair. "You are untouchable, Adrian." Untouchable. The word echoed through his mind. Untouchable, powerful, respected, admired. Yet somehow completely alone. Hours later, the party finally ended. Luxury cars disappeared into the night. Guests returned to their own lives. Staff quietly cleaned the penthouse. Empty glasses remained. Forgotten conversations lingered. Artificial smiles vanished. Adrian found himself standing exactly where he had begun. In front of the glass walls, watching the city. Marcus approached once more. "Everything has been handled," he said. "Tomorrow's schedule is prepared. You have calls beginning early in the morning. Cancel them." Marcus blinked. "Sir?" "Cancel everything." A long silence followed. Marcus knew Adrian well enough to recognize when something was different. "May I ask why?" Adrian stared at his reflection in the glass. A man who appeared to have everything. A man who felt like he had nothing. "Marcus," he said quietly, "have you ever wondered what it would be like to be invisible?" The question caught him off guard. Invisible? To walk into a room where nobody knows your name. Nobody expects anything from you. Nobody wants anything from you. Marcus frowned. "I cannot say that I have." Adrian nodded. "I think about it constantly." The confession surprised even him. For years, he had buried those thoughts beneath work, money, and responsibility. Tonight, they refused to stay buried. "I want to know what it feels like," Adrian continued, "to be valued without the weight of everything attached to my name." Marcus studied him carefully. "This sounds serious." "It is." Silence stretched between them. Then Adrian spoke the words that would change his life. "I want to disappear." Marcus stared at him. "Disappear?" "For a while. The company will panic. The company will survive. The media will ask questions. Let them ask. People depend on you." Adrian finally turned away from the window. For the first time that night, his expression was completely honest. No masks, no performance, no control, only vulnerability. "I do not know who I am anymore," he admitted. "And if I stay here, I never will." Marcus had no response. The city lights continued shining beyond the glass. The world outside remained unchanged, yet something enormous had already shifted. A man who possessed wealth, influence, and power beyond imagination had made a decision few people would ever understand. He would walk away. Not because he had failed, not because he had lost everything, but because success had given him every answer except the one that mattered most. Who was he when nobody knew his name? As dawn slowly approached beyond the skyline, Adrian stared into the darkness and prepared to leave behind the only life he had ever known. Far away, beyond the towers and boardrooms, beyond the luxury and expectations, another world waited for him, and neither Adrian nor that quiet coastal community had any idea how dramatically their lives were about to collide. The journey out of Adrian Mercer's world began before sunrise. There were no public announcements, no farewell speeches, no final board meeting, no headlines flashing across financial networks. There was only silence. A black SUV slipped out of the underground garage beneath his penthouse while the city still slept. Streetlights reflected across the windshield. Empty roads stretched ahead. The skyline slowly faded behind them. Inside the vehicle, Adrian sat alone in the back seat. For the first time in years, he was not wearing an expensive suit. No tailored jacket, no polished shoes, no luxury watch. He wore faded jeans, a plain shirt, and worn boots. Beside him rested a small duffel bag. Everything he carried fit inside it. Marcus sat in the front passenger seat. The assistant remained unusually quiet. Finally, he spoke. "This is still a terrible idea." Adrian smiled faintly. "That is exactly why I know it is the right one." Marcus sighed. "At least let me place security nearby." "No. You are one of the most recognizable businessmen in the country. Not where I am going." Marcus rubbed his forehead. "You spent decades building an empire. People do not simply walk away from something like that." Adrian looked out the window. The city lights were disappearing behind them. "I am not walking away from anything," he said quietly. "Then what are you doing?" Adrian watched the horizon brighten. "I am walking towards something." "What?" The answer came slowly. "I do not know yet." That uncertainty worried Marcus more than anything else. Adrian always had answers. Adrian always had plans. Adrian always knew the next step. Yet now he was leaving everything behind for a destination he could not define. Hours passed. The highways narrowed. The skyscrapers disappeared. Luxury developments gave way to open fields. The air felt cleaner. The sky seemed larger. For the first time in years, Adrian noticed how beautiful an ordinary morning could be. Eventually, the vehicle reached a coastal village. The ocean stretched endlessly before them. Golden sunlight danced across rolling waves, fishing boats lined the shore, weathered wooden houses stood against the sea breeze. Men repaired nets beside the water. Children chased one another across the sand. Life moved at a completely different rhythm. There were no boardrooms, no investors, no schedules, no performance, just people. The SUV stopped near the edge of the village. Marcus turned toward him. "This is where I leave you." Adrian nodded. Neither man moved for several seconds. Their professional relationship had lasted nearly 15 years. Neither knew how to say goodbye. Finally, Marcus extended his hand. "Take care of yourself." Adrian shook it. "You too." Then he stepped out. The heat hit him immediately. Salt filled the air. Waves crashed against the shore. The scent of fish and ocean water lingered everywhere. The SUV pulled away without ceremony. Within moments, it disappeared down the road. Adrian stood alone. No security, no staff, no recognition. For the first time in decades, nobody knew who he was. The feeling was strangely liberating. The village did not welcome him, at least not immediately. People noticed him. Children paused their games. Women exchanged curious glances. Older men watched carefully. Strangers were uncommon here. Well-dressed strangers were even rarer. Adrian felt their suspicion. Oddly enough, he preferred it. Suspicion felt more honest than admiration. He approached several fishermen sitting near a pile of nets. "Good afternoon," he said. No one answered. An older fisherman finally looked up. His face was weathered by decades beneath the sun. His eyes were sharp. "You are not from here." It was not a question. "No," Adrian admitted. "What do you want?" "Work?" The fishermen exchanged looks. Then laughter erupted. "Work?" One man nearly choked. "You?" Adrian remained calm. "Yes." The older fisherman stood. He grabbed Adrian's hand. His rough fingers examined the soft skin carefully. "These hands have never worked a day on the ocean." "That is true." "Then go back where you came from." "I can learn." The older man studied him for a long moment. The wind blew across the shoreline. Waves crashed behind them. Finally, he spoke. "What is your name?" The question caught Adrian off guard. His real name carried weight, power, history, expectations. He did not want any of that here. He looked toward the ocean. Then he answered, "Ace." The name felt unfamiliar, yet somehow freeing. The fisherman nodded. "I am Bako." He pointed toward the sea. "The ocean does not care who you are." Ace nodded. "I understand." Bako shook his head. "No, you do not." He turned away. "Be here before sunrise tomorrow. If you are late, do not come back." Adrian smiled. "Thank you." Bako did not respond. That night, Adrian rented a small room near the edge of the village. The structure was simple. The bed was thin. The ceiling fan barely worked. There was no luxury, no comfort, no extravagance. Only the distant sound of waves. He lay awake staring at the ceiling. For years, his nights had been consumed by emails, meetings, and decisions. Now there was nothing demanding his attention, nothing pulling at him, nothing requiring a response. The silence felt unfamiliar, then unexpectedly peaceful. Before dawn, a loud knock rattled the door. "Ace?" Balco's voice. Adrian jumped from bed. Moments later, he stepped outside. The sky remained dark. Lanterns flickered throughout the village. Fishermen prepared their boats. The entire community was already awake. Balco crossed his arms. "You are not late." "I said I would not be. Get in the boat." The command was simple. Adrian climbed aboard. Immediately he slipped. Laughter erupted around him. "Careful, city boy." His pride took the first hit of many. Out on the water, everything changed. The village disappeared behind them. The ocean stretched endlessly in every direction. The boat rocked unpredictably. Adrian gripped the edge tightly. His knuckles turned white. "Relax," Balco said. "I am relaxed." "No, you are terrified." The fisherman laughed again. Balco handed him a fishing net. "Throw it." Adrian stared at the tangled ropes. "How?" Balco demonstrated effortlessly. The net spread beautifully before sinking beneath the water. "Now you." Adrian tried. The result was disastrous. The net tangled immediately. It splashed uselessly beside the boat. The laughter returned louder than before. "Again," Balco ordered. Adrian tried again, and failed again. Then again and again. Each attempt improved slightly. Not enough. By sunrise, his arms ached. Blisters had already begun forming. His pride was bruised. His confidence was challenged. Yet something unexpected stirred inside him. Determination, real determination. Not the ambition that built companies, not the hunger that created wealth. Something simpler. Something more honest. The desire to earn respect. Days passed. His routine became predictable. Wake before dawn, work until exhaustion, return with the catch, repeat. The villagers laughed at his mistakes. The ocean punished his inexperience. The work pushed him beyond his limits. Still, he refused to quit. His hands grew rougher. His skin darkened beneath the relentless sun. His muscles adapted. Slowly, the outsider began changing. One evening, after an especially difficult day, Adrian sat alone beside the shore. The sunset painted the ocean gold. Children ran laughing across the sand. Fishermen argued playfully nearby. Women prepared evening meals. Life felt authentic, messy, beautiful, real. For the first time, nobody cared how much money he had. Nobody cared about his status. Nobody expected favors. His value depended entirely on what he contributed. The realization felt strangely freeing. Then a voice interrupted his thoughts. "You are doing it wrong." Adrian opened his eyes. A young woman stood nearby carrying a basket of smoked fish. Her expression was amused, confident, unimpressed, unlike everyone from his previous life. She pointed toward the fishing net beside him. "You hold that thing, like someone who has never worked a day in his life." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "And you can tell that from one glance." She smiled. "Absolutely." Then she stepped closer. "Show me." Adrian picked up the net. She watched carefully. When he finished, she laughed. "That is terrible." For the first time in weeks, Adrian laughed too. The sound surprised him. It sounded genuine. The woman reached for the net. "Do you actually want to learn?" "Yes." "Then stop thinking so much." Adrian studied her. "What does the ocean like?" She looked toward the waves. "Respect." Then she met his eyes, and patience. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, Adrian watched her demonstrate. Her movements were smooth, confident, natural. For a brief moment, he forgot everything else. The city, the boardroom, the lies, the loneliness. "What is your name?" he asked. She paused. "Zara." The name lingered in his thoughts. "I am Ace," he said. Zara looked at him carefully, longer than necessary, as if she could already see through him. Finally, she smiled. "We will see about that." Then she walked away. Adrian watched her disappear into the fading light. For reasons he could not explain, something felt different. He had come searching for freedom. He had come searching for himself. Yet standing beside the ocean that evening, one unexpected meeting suddenly made that journey far more complicated and far more important. The sea had a rhythm. Ace was beginning to understand that, not control it, never control it, only feel it. The rise and fall of the waves, the whispers of the wind before a weather change, the hidden pull beneath the surface, the quiet warnings carried through water and sky. The ocean spoke constantly. The fisherman simply knew how to listen. Several days had passed since Ace arrived in the village. His hands were no longer soft, small cuts covered his fingers. Blisters had hardened into calluses. His shoulders ached every morning, his muscles burned every evening. Yet each day he felt stronger, more grounded, more alive. The man who once lived above the clouds in a glass tower felt increasingly distant. That morning, sunlight spilled across the shoreline. Fishing boats returned from the early catch. Gulls circled overhead. Voices echoed through the village. Laughter mixed with the sounds of waves and creaking wood. Ace sat on an overturned crate, struggling with a tangled fishing net. His fingers worked carefully, slowly, patiently. Unfortunately, not correctly. "You are doing it wrong again." The familiar voice arrived before he looked up. Ace smiled despite himself. "Good morning to you too." Zara balanced a basket of smoked fish on her head. The morning sun illuminated her face. Confidence radiated from her naturally, unlike the carefully practiced confidence he remembered from corporate boardrooms. Hers felt real, earned. "I can see you ignoring me," she said. "I was concentrating." "You were making the problem worse." She lowered the basket and crouched beside him. Without asking permission, she reached for the net. Her fingers moved quickly, effortlessly. Within seconds, she solved knots that had frustrated him for 10 minutes. "You pull here," she said. "That is what I did." "No," she replied. "That is what you thought you did." Ace laughed quietly. "You enjoy correcting me." "Not true." "Really?" "I enjoy watching you finally realize I am right." He shook his head. "You are extremely confident." Zara looked toward the ocean. The world does not leave much room for uncertainty. The statement carried weight, more than her casual tone suggested. Ace noticed. He was learning that Zara often hid deeper truths beneath simple words. For a moment he studied her. She noticed immediately. "You stare too much." "I observe." That sounds like a fancy way of saying the same thing. "Maybe." She narrowed her eyes. "You still talk differently than everyone else here." A brief tension passed through him. "Different how?" "Like you think about every sentence before speaking." "That is not a bad thing." "Sometimes it is." She handed the repaired net back. "Throw it." Ace stood. He moved toward the shoreline, carefully positioning his hands exactly as she taught him. Then he cast the net. It spread wider, cleaner, more controlled. Not perfect, but better. When he turned around, Zara was already watching. "Acceptable," she said. Ace placed a hand over his heart. Such overwhelming praise. "Do not get used to it." From that day forward, Zara became part of his routine. Not intentionally, not officially, their paths simply crossed again and again. At the docks, at the market, near the boats, along the shore. Each encounter lasted slightly longer than the one before. Each conversation revealed something new. One hot afternoon, Ace finished unloading the day's catch. The sun hung heavily above the village. Sweat soaked through his shirt. His muscles felt exhausted. As he approached the market, he spotted Zara behind her stall. Rows of smoked fish filled the wooden display. Customers moved in and out steadily. Zara handled each interaction with confidence, firm when necessary, friendly when appropriate. Never intimidated, never rushed. Ace leaned against a nearby post, watching quietly. "You are staring again." She did not even look up. "You always notice." "I notice everything." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." A smile touched her lips. "What are you doing here?" "I am deciding whether your fish is worth buying." That finally earned her attention. She folded her arms. "My fish is the best in this village." "That sounds confident." "That sounds accurate." Ace approached the stall. "Convince me." "I do not need to convince you." "Why not?" "Either you recognize quality or you do not." He laughed. That is your sales strategy? It works. Ace purchased a piece. The flavor surprised him. It was genuinely excellent, better than anything he expected. Still, he kept a neutral expression. Well? Zara asked. Ace shrugged. It is all right. It is. Without warning, Zara snatched the fish from his hand. Then buy somewhere else. Ace stared at her. You are serious? Completely. For a moment, neither moved. Then he burst out laughing. A genuine laugh, loud enough to attract attention. Fine, he admitted. It is excellent. Zara considered him carefully, then returned the fish. Better answer. As evening approached, the village softened. The day's energy faded. The sky transformed into brilliant shades of orange and pink. The ocean reflected every color. Ace walked along the shoreline. He found Zara standing near the water, barefoot, silent, watching the horizon. For once, she was not working, not speaking, not smiling. She simply stood there, still, thoughtful. Ace approached slowly. You are quiet today. Without turning around, she answered, So are you. I can be. I noticed. He stopped beside her. Together they watched the waves. The sea moved gently beneath the fading sunlight. The ocean feels different at this hour, Zara said. Calmer? She nodded. Like it is resting. Ace crossed his arms. Or preparing. Zara glanced toward him. You always think ahead. Old habit. For a few moments they remained silent. The silence felt comfortable. Not awkward, not forced, simply shared. Then Zara asked a question. Why did you come here? Ace felt tension settle into his chest. The truth remained dangerous. I needed a change. That is not a real answer. It is true. She shook her head. People do not come here because they need a change. What do they come for? Because they are running toward something. Or running away from something. The words landed uncomfortably close to reality. Ace looked toward the horizon. What do you think I am doing? Zara finally turned fully toward him. Her eyes searched his face. I think you are hiding. The statement struck harder than he expected, not because it was wrong, because it was right. For several seconds neither spoke. The ocean filled the silence. And if I am? He asked quietly. Zara held his gaze. Then whatever you are hiding from will eventually find you. The certainty in her voice unsettled him, not because he doubted her, because deep down he believed she was correct. The life he abandoned still existed. His responsibilities remained. His name still carried weight. Nothing had disappeared. He had simply stepped away. For now. The sun slipped lower. Darkness slowly approached. Zara stepped back. I should go. Back to the market. She smiled faintly. Home. Ace nodded. I will see you tomorrow. For a brief moment, Zara hesitated, then she smiled again, a little softer this time. You probably will. She turned and walked away. Ace remained where he was, watching the waves, listening to the ocean, thinking about her words. You are hiding. The truth lingered in his mind, yet another realization slowly emerged beside it. Since arriving in the village, he had begun changing. Not because of the work, not because of the ocean, not even because of the freedom. Because of connection. Real connection. The kind he had spent years searching for without realizing it. As darkness settled across the shoreline, Ace finally turned toward the village. He intended to return to his room. Instead, his eyes caught sight of Zara one final time. She stood farther up the path, looking back at him, only for a second. Then she disappeared into the evening shadows. Ace smiled to himself. For reasons he could not explain, that single glance felt more valuable than a room full of investors praising his success. Yet somewhere deep inside, another thought lingered. Dangerous, persistent, unavoidable. The more Zara became part of his life, the more difficult the truth would become. And one day, sooner than he wanted to admit, that truth would demand to be told. The village woke before the sun. Lanterns glowed softly through the darkness. Fishing boats creaked against wooden docks. The smell of salt and seaweed drifted through the cool air. Roosters called from distant yards. Waves rolled steadily onto the shore. Life here followed ancient rhythms. No alarms, no conference calls, no schedules dictated by investors. Only the ocean. Only survival. Only community. Ace stepped outside his small rented room before dawn. The sky remained dark blue, stars still lingered overhead, his muscles ached from the previous day's work, his hands felt stiff, yet he welcomed the discomfort. Pain earned honestly felt different, it carried purpose. As he approached the docks, Baker was already waiting. The older fisherman crossed his arms. "You are improving." The unexpected compliment surprised Ace. That almost sounded kind. Baker frowned. "Do not ruin the moment." Several fishermen laughed. Ace smiled. Weeks ago, those same men had mocked him openly. Now their laughter felt different, less hostile, more familiar. The boat pushed away from shore. Dark water surrounded them. The wind carried the promise of another long day. As the vessel rocked across the waves, Baker handed Ace a net. "Show me." Ace nodded. This time his movements flowed naturally. The net opened wide. Perfectly. It settled across the water like a giant circle. The fisherman watched. No laughter followed, only silence. Then Bako grunted, "Not terrible." Coming from him, it felt like receiving an award. The men chuckled. Ace bowed dramatically. "Your praise humbles me." Bako rolled his eyes. "Get back to work." Hours later, the sun blazed overhead. The ocean sparkled beneath the light. The boat rocked steadily. Fish filled the storage bins. The day had been productive. For the first time, Ace felt useful. Not important, not powerful, useful. The distinction mattered. Back in his old life, people valued his influence. Here, they valued effort. The difference was profound. When the boat returned to shore, the village buzzed with activity. Children ran along the docks. Merchants prepared their stalls. Families gathered near the market. The entire community seemed connected by invisible threads. Everyone knew everyone. Everyone mattered. Ace carried baskets toward the market. As expected, Zara was already there. She stood behind her stall organizing smoked fish. The afternoon sunlight highlighted her determined expression. She noticed him immediately. "You look exhausted." "I am exhausted." "Good." "That sounds cruel." "It sounds honest." Ace placed the basket nearby. "I thought friends were supposed to be supportive." Zara raised an eyebrow. "Who said we are friends?" The answer caught him off guard. Then she smiled, a small smile, just enough to reveal she was teasing. "That was unnecessary," he said, "but entertaining." Throughout the afternoon, Ace remained nearby, partly because he had finished work, mostly because he enjoyed her company. Customers came and went. Zara negotiated prices. She challenged dishonest buyers. She joked with regular customers. She treated wealthy visitors and struggling neighbors exactly the same. Ace admired that. Respect without favoritism. Strength without arrogance. Confidence without cruelty. The qualities stood out because they were increasingly rare. As the day faded into evening, dark clouds appeared on the horizon. The change was subtle at first, then unmistakable. The wind shifted, birds flew lower, the ocean grew restless. Bako appeared near the market. His expression was serious. That alone drew attention. "Storm coming," he announced. Conversations immediately quieted. Villagers exchanged concerned looks. The older fishermen stared toward the horizon. They did not like what they saw. Neither did Bako. "Big one?" someone asked. He nodded. "Looks that way." The mood changed instantly. People moved faster. Stalls began closing. Boats were secured more carefully. Families gathered supplies. Experience had taught them respect for nature. Ace watched the transformation. The village moved as one. No orders, no confusion. Everyone simply knew what needed to be done. "Help us," Zara said. Without hesitation, Ace nodded. The next several hours became a blur of activity. Heavy ropes were tightened, fishing equipment was stored, windows were reinforced, loose materials were secured. The wind strengthened steadily. Dark clouds swallowed the evening sky. Thunder rumbled far offshore. The ocean no longer looked peaceful. It looked angry, dangerous, alive. Rain began shortly after sunset. At first it fell lightly, then harder, then relentlessly. The storm arrived with frightening speed. Powerful winds battered the village. Palm trees bent beneath the pressure. Rain slammed against rooftops. Thunder exploded overhead. The sea roared beyond the shoreline. Inside a community shelter, families gathered together. Children huddled close to their parents. Lanterns flickered. Voices remained low. Concern filled every face. Ace stood near one of the windows, watching the storm, feeling strangely calm, until Zara appeared beside him. "You should sit down. I am fine." "You have been standing there for an hour." "Maybe I enjoy dramatic weather." She looked outside. Lightning illuminated the shoreline. Massive waves crashed against the coast. "You are strange," she said. "I have heard that before." The shelter shook slightly as another gust struck. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Zara surprised him. "I am glad you stayed." Ace looked toward her. "Stayed where?" "Here." The simplicity of the answer affected him more than expected. Nobody in his old life had ever said something so straightforward, so genuine, so free of hidden motives. "Thank you," he said quietly. She nodded, then looked away. Outside, the storm intensified. Hours passed. Wind howled through the darkness. Rain hammered relentlessly. The ocean attacked the shore. Yet eventually the worst began to pass. The thunder moved farther away. The wind weakened slightly. The village breathed collectively. Morning arrived beneath grey skies. The damage could finally be assessed. People stepped outside cautiously. The air smelled of rain and salt. Broken branches littered the ground. Several roofs had suffered damage. Fishing equipment lay scattered, but the village remained standing. Relief spread quickly. Then someone shouted. A fishing boat had broken free. One of the largest vessels in the village had drifted away during the night. Panic followed immediately. That boat supported several families. Without it, their livelihood faced serious danger. Fishermen gathered near the docks. The sea remained rough. The missing vessel could not be seen. Bako studied the horizon. His expression darkened. The currents carried it north. "Can we recover it?" someone asked. He hesitated. That hesitation frightened everyone. The ocean remained dangerous. Another trip could be risky, yet losing the boat would be devastating. Ace looked toward the water, then toward the worried faces around him. The answer felt obvious. "We go after it." Several fishermen turned. Bako frowned. "The sea is still rough." "Then we leave before conditions worsen again." The older man studied him carefully. "This is not a game." "I know. People can die out there." Ace nodded. "I know that too." The truth settled over the group. No one spoke. The ocean growled beyond the docks. Grey clouds still covered the sky. Finally, Bako made his decision. "Prepare the boats." Movement erupted immediately. Ropes were gathered. Engines were checked. Supplies were loaded. The rescue mission would begin. As fishermen rushed into action, Zara approached Ace. Concern filled her eyes. "You do not have to do this." "Yes, I do." "Why?" The question lingered between them. Ace looked toward the sea, then back at her. "Because this village gave me a place when I had nowhere else to go." Her expression softened. Neither said another word. The wind swept across the docks. Boats rocked against the waves. The search party prepared to leave. Yet as Ace stepped aboard, an uneasy feeling settled deep inside him. The storm might be over, but something told him the real danger was only beginning. Grey clouds stretched across the morning sky. The sea remained restless. Waves rolled heavily beneath the fishing boats. The shoreline seemed unusually quiet. Even the children watched silently as the rescue team prepared to leave. Everyone understood the risk. The missing vessel represented far more than wood and machinery. It represented income, food, security, hope. Without it, several families would struggle. Ace tightened a rope near the bow. The wind tugged at his shirt. Salt spray coated his face. His heart felt steady, focused, determined. Bako moved through the boat, performing final checks. His expression remained serious. The older fisherman rarely displayed fear. Today was different. He respected the sea too much to underestimate it. "Stay alert," he told the crew. "Conditions can change quickly." Several men nodded. Nobody joked. Nobody laughed. The atmosphere carried a weight that everyone felt. As the engines started, villagers gathered near the docks. Families stood together. Some offered prayers. Others offered encouragement. Many simply watched. Zara stood among them, her arms crossed tightly. Her eyes remained fixed on Ace. He noticed. For a brief moment, their gazes met. Neither smiled. Neither waved. The silence between them somehow communicated more than words. Then the boat pulled away. The distance grew. The village slowly shrank behind them. Ahead stretched only ocean. The water remained rough. Large swells lifted the vessel before dropping it again. Clouds blocked most of the sunlight. Everything felt cold, uncertain. The fishermen searched methodically. Hours passed. Nothing. No sign of the missing boat. No floating debris. No clues. Only endless water. The mood darkened. Fuel was limited. Time mattered. Hope began fading. Then one of the younger fishermen shouted, "There!" Every head turned. Far in the distance, barely visible between the waves, something drifted across the water. Bako grabbed binoculars. His eyes narrowed, then relief flashed across his face. "We found it!" Excitement spread through the crew. The missing vessel had survived, damaged, drifting, but intact. The engines accelerated. The rescue boat pushed forward. Soon the abandoned vessel came fully into view. One side had suffered damage. Several ropes had snapped. Part of the deck was flooded, yet it remained afloat. The fishermen celebrated. The worst outcome had been avoided. At least that was what everyone believed. Until Bako suddenly pointed toward the damaged boat. "Someone is on board." The crew fell silent. Ace looked carefully. At first he saw nothing, then movement. Near the rear of the vessel, a figure, weak, barely standing. Everyone stared in disbelief. The missing boat should have been empty. Instead, someone was there, alive. The rescue vessel pulled alongside. Several fishermen climbed aboard quickly. Ace followed. The deck was slippery. Water pooled everywhere. Broken equipment lay scattered across the surface. Near the stern, a young man collapsed against a damaged railing. His clothes were soaked. His face appeared pale. Exhaustion consumed him. "Easy," Ace said. The stranger lifted his head slowly. Fear filled his eyes. Confusion too. "Help me," he whispered. Then he lost consciousness. The crew moved immediately. They checked his breathing, his pulse, his injuries. Fortunately, he remained alive. Barely. Bako frowned. "Who is he?" Nobody recognized him. That only deepened the mystery. The nearest communities were far away. How had he ended up aboard a drifting fishing vessel? The questions multiplied. Answers remained absent. The rescue operation suddenly became far more complicated. Hours later, both boats returned to the village. The recovered vessel drew cheers from the shoreline. Families celebrated. Relief spread quickly. Then people noticed the unconscious stranger. Curiosity replaced celebration. Crowds gathered immediately. Questions erupted from every direction. Who was he? Where did he come from? What happened? No one knew. The young man was carried to the village clinic, a small building near the center of town. Simple, modest, effective. Ace accompanied the group, partly because he helped rescue him, partly because something about the situation felt important. Hours passed. The stranger finally regained consciousness late that evening. Several villagers gathered nearby. Bako stood beside the bed. Ace remained near the doorway. The young man looked frightened, disoriented, weak. "What is your name?" Bako asked. The stranger swallowed. "Darius. Where are you from?" A hesitation, long enough to draw attention, then an answer. "North Harbor." Several fishermen exchanged looks. North Harbor was hundreds of miles away, far beyond the normal fishing routes. "How did you end up on that boat?" Bako asked. Darius looked away. Fear flickered across his face. The reaction was immediate. Ace noticed. So did everyone else. "I was hiding," Darius said quietly. The room became silent. Hiding. The word echoed strangely inside Ace. Too familiar, too personal. Bako folded his arms. "From what?" The young man hesitated again. His hands trembled visibly. Then he spoke. "Some dangerous people." Nobody interrupted. "I witnessed something I should not have seen," he continued. "What kind of people?" Darius lowered his voice. "Criminals." The answer chilled the room. The villagers were not accustomed to such problems. Their world revolved around fishing, family, and survival. Organized crime belonged somewhere else, somewhere distant, somewhere removed from their lives. At least, that was what they believed. Darius continued. They were looking for me. Why? Bacco asked. Because I know what they did. The silence deepened. Fear crept into the room. Not panic, not yet, but concern. Real concern. Darius closed his eyes. Exhaustion overwhelmed him again. The conversation ended. Questions remained unanswered. Many questions. Outside, darkness covered the village. Lanterns glowed softly along narrow pathways. The ocean rolled quietly against the shore. The storm had passed. Yet another kind of trouble seemed to be arriving. Ace walked toward the beach. His thoughts felt heavy. The rescue should have been a victory. Instead, it had introduced uncertainty, danger, complications. He found Zara sitting on a piece of driftwood overlooking the sea. The moonlight reflected across the water. The waves shimmered silver beneath the night sky. She noticed him approaching. You found the boat. And he did. And a stranger. That too. She studied his expression. Something is bothering you. Ace sat beside her. For a while he simply listened to the waves. Then he spoke. Do you ever feel like trouble follows certain people? Zara smiled faintly. Sometimes people bring trouble with them. The answer struck closer than she realized. Ace looked toward the horizon. His secret remained buried, for now. Yet lately he found himself wondering how long that would last. The more connected he became to the village, the greater the consequences. Not only for him, for everyone. Zara watched him carefully. You are thinking too much again. Probably. You always do that when something matters. Ace glanced toward her. The observation surprised him, because it was true. She understood more than he expected, more than he wanted. The night grew quieter. The wind softened. For a brief moment, peace settled over the shoreline. Then, distant headlights appeared near the main road entering the village. Several vehicles, large vehicles, moving slowly through the darkness. Too many for ordinary visitors. Too late for normal business. Zara noticed them too. Who is that? Ace followed the lights. An uneasy feeling tightened inside him. The vehicles continued approaching, one after another, silent, purposeful. The village slept peacefully. Most residents remained unaware. But Ace could not shake the feeling that those headlights carried something dangerous. Something connected to the frightened stranger they rescued from the sea. And as the vehicles rolled closer beneath the moonlit sky, a single terrifying possibility entered his mind. Perhaps Darius had not escaped his pursuers after all. Perhaps he had simply led them directly to the village. The headlights continued moving through the darkness. One vehicle, then another, then another. Their beams cut across the quiet coastal road like knives. The peaceful atmosphere vanished instantly. Ace stood from the driftwood. His eyes remained fixed on the approaching convoy. Every instinct inside him warned that something was wrong, very wrong. Beside him, Zara rose slowly. You know something, she said. Ace hesitated. No. The answer came too quickly, too automatically. She noticed. That was not convincing. The vehicles rolled closer. Dust rose behind them. The sound of engines echoed through the night. Several villagers had begun noticing the arrival. People emerged from homes. Lanterns flickered. Questions spread. Concern followed. The convoy finally stopped near the center of the village. 5 large black SUVs. Their appearance alone felt out of place. Nothing about them belonged here. Doors opened simultaneously. Several men stepped out. Tall, well-dressed, serious, not tourists, not fishermen, not travelers, men with purpose. The villagers gathered cautiously. Bacco arrived moments later. His expression hardened immediately. Who are you? He demanded. One of the newcomers stepped forward. He appeared to be their leader. His expensive clothing contrasted sharply against the humble surroundings. His smile never reached his eyes. Good evening, he said politely. We are looking for someone. Nobody answered. The man continued. A young man, injured, alone. The crowd became silent. Darius. Everyone understood immediately. The stranger had been found. The visitors had arrived. The timing was no coincidence. Bacco crossed his arms. And why are you looking for him? The leader smiled again. Family matter. Nobody believed him, not for a second. The tension grew heavier. The ocean seemed quieter. The wind itself appeared to pause, waiting, watching. Then another voice interrupted. "They are lying." Everyone turned. Darius stood near the clinic entrance, weak, unsteady, but awake. Fear covered his face. The leader's smile disappeared instantly. A colder expression replaced it. Recognition flashed between them. The truth became obvious. These men were not family, they were hunters. And Darius was their target. Several villagers moved protectively closer to him, including Bako, including Ace. The leader sighed. "You have complicated things unnecessarily." Darius swallowed hard. "Stay away from me. You know too much." The admission shocked everyone. The man had stopped pretending. The mask was gone. The danger was real. Villagers exchanged nervous glances. Some stepped backward. Others stood their ground. Ace watched carefully. Every detail, every movement, every face. The leader suddenly noticed him, only briefly. Yet something changed. His eyes narrowed, recognition flickered, then vanished. Ace felt a chill run through him. The man knew something, or thought he did. "We do not want trouble," the leader said. "Then leave," Bako replied. The answer was immediate, firm, unshaken. Several fishermen stepped beside him. The villagers stood together. One community, one voice, one line. The leader looked around slowly, evaluating, calculating. Then he smiled once more. This time the smile felt dangerous. "Very well." The tension eased slightly, too quickly, too easily. Ace did not trust it, neither did Bako. The men returned toward their vehicles. Engines started, headlights illuminated the village again. Then the convoy departed, slowly, silently, disappearing into the darkness. The crowd remained frozen long after they were gone. Nobody celebrated, nobody relaxed. Everyone sensed the same thing. This was not over. Not even close. Later that night, a meeting formed inside the community hall. Lantern light filled the room. Concern filled every face. Darius sat near the front, still pale, still frightened. Bako stood beside him. "Tell us everything," he said. Darius lowered his eyes. For several moments, he struggled to speak. Then the words finally came. "I worked at a shipping company." The room remained silent. At first, everything seemed normal. He paused. "Then I discovered illegal cargo." Several villagers frowned. Darius continued. "Weapons, money, records, evidence." His voice trembled. "I copied information before they discovered me." The revelation stunned the room. "Why not go to the authorities?" someone asked. "I tried." Darius laughed bitterly. Some authorities were involved. The answer landed heavily. Corruption, influence, power, the same forces Ace knew all too well. Darius looked toward the floor. People died because of what they knew. Nobody spoke. Fear settled over the gathering, real fear, not imagined, not exaggerated. The kind that arrives when danger becomes personal. Ace studied the young man carefully. He recognized the expression. Desperation, isolation, the burden of carrying knowledge that could destroy lives. The burden of being hunted. When the meeting ended, villagers slowly returned home, yet nobody truly rested. Questions lingered, worries multiplied. The village no longer felt isolated from the outside world. Its problems had arrived. Ace walked toward the shoreline. The moon reflected across the waves. Clouds drifted overhead. His thoughts felt heavier than ever. Soon footsteps approached. "Zara." "Of course." She stopped beside him. "You knew this was serious." It was not a question. Ace stared at the ocean. "I suspected." "You always suspect things before everyone else." The observation unsettled him, because it was true, because it came from experience, experience he should not possess. Not as a fisherman, not as Ace. Zara watched him carefully. "Who are you really?" The question arrived softly, yet it struck harder than any accusation. Ace felt his heartbeat quicken. The truth pressed against the walls he had built, threatening to escape. "I told you who I am." "No." She shook her head. "You told me your name." Silence followed, long, dangerous. The wind swept across the beach. Neither moved. Finally, Zara sighed. "Forget it." But her expression revealed the truth. She was not forgetting anything. She was watching, observing, learning. and she was getting closer, much closer. The following morning brought no relief. Several fishermen reported unfamiliar vehicles parked beyond the village. Watching, waiting, the convoy had returned. Not openly, not aggressively, but strategically. They remained nearby, monitoring, patient, like predators circling prey. Fear spread quickly. Parents worried about children. Business slowed. Conversations became cautious. The village felt different, uneasy, fragile. By afternoon, Ace could no longer ignore reality. He walked alone along a narrow path overlooking the sea. His thoughts raced. The situation was escalating, and deep inside, he knew something nobody else understood. If those men eventually discovered his true identity, everything would become infinitely worse. His name alone could attract media, authorities, business rivals, political attention. The village could become the center of a storm far larger than anyone imagined. He stopped near a cliff overlooking the ocean. Waves crashed far below. The horizon stretched endlessly ahead. For a long moment he stood alone, thinking, then a familiar voice emerged behind him. "I knew I would find you here." Ace turned. Marcus stood on the path, his assistant, his friend, his connection to the life he abandoned. Marcus looked exhausted, travel-worn, concerned, and very serious. The sight shocked Ace completely. "How did you find me?" Marcus exhaled heavily. "That is the least important question right now." Immediately, Ace knew something was wrong. Very wrong. Marcus stepped forward, his face tightened. "You need to come back." Ace's stomach dropped. "Why?" The answer changed everything. "Because your company is under attack." The wind roared across the cliff, the ocean crashed below, and suddenly the peaceful life Ace had built in the village began colliding violently with the powerful world he thought he left behind. The words hit Ace harder than any wave he had ever faced. "Your company is under attack." For several seconds, neither man spoke. The wind swept across the cliff. Below them, powerful waves crashed against the rocks. Far in the distance, fishing boats drifted across the horizon. The peaceful scenery felt completely disconnected from the storm suddenly erupting inside his mind. Marcus stepped closer. "I have been trying to reach you for days." Ace crossed his arms. "I left for a reason." "I know." "Then why are you here?" Marcus looked exhausted. His eyes carried the weight of sleepless nights. "Because this cannot wait." Ace turned toward the ocean. He already knew Marcus would not have come unless the situation was serious. The assistant was practical, disciplined, loyal. He never acted impulsively. "Tell me everything," Ace said. Marcus exhaled slowly. 3 members of the board resigned unexpectedly. Ace frowned. That alone was unusual. "Continue." "Several major investors withdrew support." His expression darkened. "Why?" "Someone leaked confidential information." The answer sent a chill through him. "What kind of information?" Marcus hesitated. "Enough to create panic." The silence that followed felt heavy. Ace understood corporate warfare. He had survived it for years. Companies rarely collapsed from competition. They collapsed from fear. Fear destroyed confidence. Confidence fueled value. Without confidence, everything unraveled. "Who is behind it?" Marcus shook his head. "We are still investigating." "And the company?" "Holding together." "Barely." Ace closed his eyes briefly. The empire he built was not simply a business. Thousands of employees depended on it. Families depended on it. Entire communities depended on it. Walking away had been one thing. Allowing it to collapse was something else entirely. Marcus studied him carefully. "You are thinking about returning." "I am thinking." "That means yes." Ace almost smiled. Marcus knew him too well. Before he could respond, another voice interrupted. "Returning where?" Both men turned. Zara stood several yards away. Neither had heard her approach. Her expression remained calm. Yet her eyes revealed concern and curiosity. A dangerous amount of curiosity. Marcus immediately noticed her. She noticed him. The tension arrived instantly. "Who is this?" Zara asked. Ace hesitated, too long. Marcus answered first. "My name is Marcus." Zara waited. Nothing more followed. "And?" Marcus glanced toward Ace. The question hung in the air. Who was he? Why was he here? How did he know Ace? The truth hovered dangerously close. Ace stepped forward. Marcus is an old friend. Zara stared at him. The explanation felt incomplete. Because it was. A friend who traveled hundreds of miles to discuss company problems. Her tone remained calm. That somehow made it worse. Marcus wisely remained silent. The conversation belonged to Ace now. The cliff suddenly felt much smaller. The secret he had protected for months seemed increasingly fragile. It is complicated, Ace said. Zara nodded slowly. That seems to be your favorite answer. Then she turned and began walking away. Ace watched her go. Something inside him tightened. He hated seeing disappointment in her eyes. Because she deserved honesty. Because she had earned honesty. Yet honesty threatened everything. Marcus spoke quietly once she disappeared. She knows. Not everything. Enough. Ace said nothing. The assistant was right. The signs were becoming impossible to hide. That afternoon, the village buzzed with rumors. The mysterious visitors remained nearby. Darius remained hidden. Tension continued growing. Now Marcus's arrival created additional questions. People noticed strangers, especially here. Nothing escaped attention for long. Ace spent most of the afternoon helping repair storm damage. Physical work usually cleared his thoughts. Today it failed. His mind remained divided. Part of him focused on the company. Part of him focused on the village. Part of him focused on Zara. Each demanded something different. Each pulled him in a different direction. By evening, exhaustion settled heavily over him. Yet peace remained impossible. Near sunset, Bacco approached. The older fisherman leaned against a stack of wooden crates. "Your friend talks like an educated man." Ace smiled faintly. "That is because he is one." Bacco studied him. "And so are you." The statement was not a question. Ace felt tension rise immediately. "What makes you say that?" Bacco shrugged. "You listen differently." "That sounds vague." "Maybe." The older man looked toward the sea. "You also hide things badly." Ace laughed despite himself. "Everyone keeps saying that." "Because it is true." The conversation ended there, yet the message remained clear. People were noticing. Perhaps they always had. Perhaps they simply chose not to ask. That realization troubled him. After dark, he found himself walking toward the shoreline. The ocean glowed beneath moonlight. The village rested quietly behind him. Most families had returned home. The night felt calm, almost peaceful. Then he saw Zara. She sat near the water, alone, watching the waves. Ace approached carefully. "Mind if I join you?" Without looking at him, she answered, "You already did." He sat beside her. Several moments passed. Neither spoke. The silence felt different tonight. Less comfortable. More complicated. Finally, Zara broke it. "Who are you?" There it was again. The question he could no longer avoid. Ace stared at the ocean. "I am still figuring that out." "That is not what I asked." He nodded. "I know." The waves rolled gently across the sand. The moon reflected across the water. The entire world seemed to pause, waiting, listening. "When you arrived," Zara said softly, "you looked lost." Ace remained silent. "Then you started changing." She looked toward him. "You smiled more. Maybe. You laughed more. Possibly. You became part of this place." The words affected him deeply, because they were true. For the first time in years, he belonged somewhere. Not because of money, not because of power. Because people accepted him. Accepted Ace, not Adrian Mercer, just Ace. Zara lowered her gaze. "Now it feels like you are leaving." The honesty in her voice hurt. Ace wanted to deny it, wanted to promise he would stay, wanted to believe it himself. Instead, he told the truth. At least part of it. "I do not know what happens next." Zara nodded slowly, as though she expected that answer. The conversation drifted into silence again. Then something unexpected happened. She reached for his hand, only briefly, only gently. Yet the simple gesture carried enormous weight. Ace looked down, then back at her. Neither spoke. Words suddenly felt unnecessary. The connection between them had grown beyond conversation, beyond friendship, beyond coincidence, and both of them knew it. For a brief moment, the problems disappeared. The company, The criminals, the secrets, everything faded. Only the two of them remained. Then a voice shattered the moment. Ace, a fisherman, sprinted toward them, breathing heavily, panicked. Ace stood immediately. What happened? The man struggled to catch his breath. The clinic. Fear flashed through Ace. What about it? The fisherman pointed toward the village, his face pale, his voice shaking. Darius is gone. The word struck like thunder. Gone. Not missing. Not wandering. Gone. The panic in the messenger's eyes said everything. This was no accident. Someone had taken him. And if that was true, the danger surrounding the village had just escalated dramatically. Ace exchanged a glance with Zara. Neither needed to speak. They both understood. The hunt had begun, and this time someone was already losing. The news spread through the village faster than the wind. Darius was gone. The words echoed from house to house, from the docks to the market, from the shoreline to the clinic. Fear followed immediately. Parents called children indoors. Doors were locked. Lanterns burned brighter. The peaceful village that once worried about storms now worried about people. Dangerous people. Ace arrived at the clinic within minutes. A crowd had already gathered. Bako stood near the entrance. His expression was darker than anyone had ever seen. Marcus remained nearby, watching carefully, analyzing everything. Ace pushed through the crowd. What happened? The clinic worker looked shaken. Two men came shortly after sunset. From the convoy. The worker nodded. They pretended to be officials. Anger flashed through the room. Several villagers cursed loudly. Others lowered their heads. The realization hurt. They had trusted appearances, and appearances had deceived them. Did anyone stop them? Ace asked. Nobody understood what was happening until it was too late. The answer brought frustration, but not blame. This village was not built for deception. People here expected honesty. That trust had become a weakness. Bako clenched his jaw. We find him. Several fishermen nodded immediately, without hesitation, without fear. The loyalty impressed Ace. Darius had arrived as a stranger, yet the village had accepted responsibility for him. That kind of character could not be bought, could not be negotiated, could not be manufactured. Marcus stepped forward. We need to think carefully. Several eyes turned toward him. Those men are organized, he continued. Rushing blindly could make things worse. Bako frowned. Doing nothing makes it worse too. The two men studied each other, different worlds, different experiences, yet both understood leadership. Ace raised his hand, the room quieted. We search intelligently. Everyone listened. We gather information first. Then we act. The crowd slowly agreed. Reason replaced emotion, at least temporarily. Hours passed. Groups searched nearby roads. Others questioned travelers. Several fishermen explored neighboring communities. No useful information emerged. The night grew deeper. Hope grew thinner. Then shortly before midnight, a breakthrough arrived. One of the younger fishermen burst into the community hall. Sweat covered his face. His breathing was uneven. I found something. Every conversation stopped. Where? Old warehouse near the northern cliffs. The room became silent. The abandoned structure had stood empty for years. Far from the village, hidden from most roads, perfect for secrecy, perfect for criminals. The fisherman swallowed hard. I saw the black SUVs there. The tension became almost unbearable. Finally, they had a lead. But leads came with risk. The room erupted into discussion. Some demanded immediate action. Others urged caution. Voices rose. Arguments followed. Until Ace spoke. I am going. The statement ended the debate. Several men volunteered instantly, including Bako. Marcus stepped forward. Absolutely not. Ace looked toward him. Excuse me? You are not walking into that situation. I am. You have no idea how dangerous this could be. Ace almost laughed. Actually, I do. Marcus fell silent. The response revealed more than intended. For a brief moment, the room seemed smaller. The secret life Ace had hidden threatened to emerge again. Eventually, a compromise formed. A small group would investigate. Observe first. Act only if necessary. The plan sounded simple. Reality rarely followed plans, especially dangerous ones. An hour later, they approached the cliffs. The moon hung behind thick clouds. The landscape felt eerie. Sharp rocks lined the shoreline. Strong winds howled through the darkness. The abandoned warehouse appeared ahead, large, silent, weathered by years of neglect. Faint light glowed through several windows. Vehicles remained parked outside, the same black SUVs. Confirmation. Darius was likely inside. Ace crouched behind a rocky outcrop. Baco positioned himself nearby. Marcus remained surprisingly calm. The others watched nervously. Several armed men patrolled outside the building. Not fishermen, not laborers, professionals. Disciplined, dangerous. Marcus leaned closer. "This is worse than I expected." Ace nodded. He felt the same. A direct confrontation would be foolish, perhaps deadly. Then something unexpected happened. One of the warehouse doors opened. The leader from the convoy stepped outside. The same cold smile, the same expensive clothing, the same dangerous confidence. Several men followed him, and between them walked Darius. Alive, restrained, terrified, relief mixed instantly with anger. At least he survived, for now. The group watched carefully, trying to hear the conversation. The wind carried fragments, only fragments, yet enough. The files, location, evidence. Tomorrow. The pieces began forming a picture. Darius possessed information, important information, something powerful enough to motivate all this effort. Then another fragment reached them. A single name, one name. The leader spoke it clearly. Mercer. Ace froze. His blood turned cold. Marcus looked at him immediately. Neither spoke, neither needed to. The name changed everything. This was no longer separate from his old life. The connection had finally appeared. The criminals knew about Mercer Industries, somehow, some way. The realization struck like lightning. Suddenly, the attacks against his company made sense. The leaks, the resignations, the pressure. Perhaps everything connected. Perhaps the criminal network and the corporate crisis were pieces of the same puzzle. The possibility terrified him, because if true, the threat was far larger than anyone imagined. The leader continued speaking. Then unexpectedly he laughed. A confident laugh, the kind used by someone certain of victory. "He will come eventually," the man said. The words drifted through the darkness. Ace felt his stomach tighten. He. Not Darius, not the villagers, someone else, someone important. Then the leader added one final sentence. The sentence changed everything. Adrian Mercer always protects what belongs to him. The world seemed to stop. Baco looked toward Ace. Marcus looked toward Ace. Even the wind felt silent, because the truth could no longer hide. The criminals were not searching for Darius alone. They were hunting Adrian Mercer. And for the first time, Ace understood something terrifying. He had never escaped his old life. His old life had simply followed him here. Then, before anyone could react, a flashlight beam swept across the rocks. One of the guards shouted, "Someone is there!" The night exploded into chaos, and every secret Ace had fought to protect suddenly stood on the edge of exposure. The flashlight beam swept across the rocks. Voices erupted immediately. "Someone is there!" The guard's shout echoed through the night. Every man near the warehouse reacted. Weapons appeared. Orders followed. The calm darkness vanished. Chaos replaced it. Ace ducked behind the rocky ledge. His heart pounded. Beside him, Baco lowered himself silently. Marcus remained remarkably composed. Years of high-pressure situations had trained him well. The other fishermen looked terrified, not because they lacked courage, because this danger was unlike anything they had faced before. The leader stepped forward. His sharp eyes scanned the darkness. "Search the area." Several armed men immediately spread out. Flashlights cut through the shadows. The distance between hunter and hunted narrowed quickly. Ace assessed the situation. Every possible outcome looked bad. If they stayed hidden, discovery seemed inevitable. If they ran, pursuit would follow. If they fought, innocent people could get hurt. The choice felt impossible. Then Marcus leaned closer. "They already know you're here." Ace frowned. "Not necessarily." "No," Marcus shook his head. "They know." The certainty in his voice was unsettling. Ace understood why. The leader's confidence earlier suddenly made sense. The man expected Adrian Mercer to appear. Perhaps this entire situation was bait, a trap, one designed specifically for him. The realization hit hard. Darius was important, but Darius might never have been the real objective. The objective was Adrian. The objective was him. A flashlight beam suddenly illuminated the edge of the rocks. Too close. Far too close. One guard stepped forward, then another. The distance shrank rapidly. Bako clenched his fists. The fishermen prepared themselves. Ace made a decision. Go. Bako turned toward him. What? Take everyone back to the village. Not happening. This is not your fight. The older fisherman stared at him, then laughed, a short, irritated laugh. The moment they entered our village, it became our fight. The answer stunned Ace, because it was exactly what Bako believed, exactly what the village believed. Family was not defined by blood here, it was defined by loyalty. The realization struck him deeply. Before he could respond, movement erupted nearby. One of the guards spotted them. There! Everything happened instantly. Men rushed forward. Voices shouted. Flashlights bounced wildly. The group scattered, running across the uneven cliffs. The wind roared around them. The ocean crashed below. Darkness concealed some paths, exposed others. Ace ran beside Marcus. Behind them, pursuit intensified. The guards moved quickly, professionally. These were not amateurs. They were accustomed to chasing people, accustomed to winning. Suddenly, Bako stumbled. One loose rock shifted beneath his foot. The older fisherman fell hard. Pain flashed across his face. Without hesitation, Ace stopped. Marcus cursed under his breath. Keep moving. Not without him. Ace reached down, helping Bako back up. The delay cost them precious seconds. The pursuers gained ground. Then headlights appeared. Bright, unexpected. Several trucks surged onto a nearby dirt road. Their engines thundered through the darkness. For one confusing moment, nobody understood what was happening. Then voices emerged. Familiar voices, village voices, dozens of them. The fishermen, the merchants, the families. The villagers had come. Word had spread, and nobody stayed home. The sight was astonishing. Truck after truck arrived. Lanterns illuminated determined faces. Ordinary people, united, fearful, yet unwilling to abandon one another. The guards hesitated. The numerical advantage disappeared instantly. The leader emerged from the warehouse. His expression hardened. The situation had changed. Villages were supposed to surrender, hide, submit, not mobilize, not resist, not stand together. For several tense moments, both groups faced one another. Neither side moved. The wind carried salt across the cliffs. The ocean roared below. The entire scene felt suspended in time. Then the leader smiled. The smile returned. Cold, calculating, dangerous. Interesting, he said. His eyes moved directly toward Ace. The stare felt deliberate, personal, targeted. You really have changed. Silence followed. No one understood the statement, except Ace and Marcus. The leader slowly stepped forward. How long were you planning to hide? The villagers exchanged confused looks. Bako looked toward Ace. Zara had arrived with the others. Her eyes remained fixed on him. Questions filled her expression. The leader continued, Did you think nobody would find you? Every word tightened the invisible pressure surrounding Ace. The truth hovered near the surface, impossible to contain, impossible to escape. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. He already knew what was coming. The leader spread his arms dramatically. Ladies and gentlemen. His voice carried across the cliffs, across the crowd, across the night. Allow me to introduce your fisherman. Ace felt every eye turn toward him, every face, every question, every expectation. The leader smiled wider. This man is Adrian Mercer. The name echoed through the gathering. Shock followed immediately. Confusion, disbelief, recognition. The reaction spread rapidly. Some villagers had heard the name before. Others had not. But everyone understood one thing. Ace had lied. The silence became unbearable. Bako stared at him. Speechless. Marcus looked away. Zara remained completely still. Her expression revealed nothing, which somehow felt worse. The leader laughed softly. Billionaire, business icon, national celebrity. Each title struck harder than the last. The distance between Ace and the villagers suddenly felt enormous. The life he escaped had arrived completely. No disguise remained, no protection remained, only truth, raw and exposed. Finally, Barco spoke. His voice sounded quieter than usual. Is it true? Ace met the older man's gaze. He could lie, one final lie. But the moment had passed. The truth was overdue. Yes, he said. The single word changed everything. Several villagers lowered their heads. Others stared in disbelief. Some looked hurt, deeply hurt, not because of who he was, because he never trusted them enough to tell them. The realization cut deeper than any accusation. Then Ace looked toward Zara. Her eyes finally met his. The pain there nearly broke him. Not anger, not hatred, disappointment. The one reaction he feared most. For several long seconds, neither spoke. The wind swept between them. The ocean thundered below. The crowd waited. Then Zara asked a single question. A simple question, the most difficult question he had ever faced. Was any of it real? Ace felt his chest tighten, because he knew exactly what she meant. The fishing, the friendship, the laughter, the connection, the life they built. Everything. The entire village waited for his answer. And somewhere behind the crowd, the criminals watched too. Watching, waiting, knowing that whatever happened next would determine far more than the fate of one secret. It would determine who Adrian Mercer truly was. The question hung in the air. Was any of it real? The wind carried Zara's words across the cliffs, across the crowd, across every heart gathered there. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Even the criminals seemed interested in the answer. Ace looked directly at her. For the first time since arriving in the village, there was nowhere left to hide. No false name, no carefully crafted distance, no escape, only truth. Yes, he said. His voice remained steady. Every part of it was real. The silence deepened. Ace stepped forward. My name is Adrian Mercer. He swallowed hard. I should have told you sooner. Nobody interrupted. I should have trusted you. The words felt heavier than anything he had ever said inside a boardroom. But the fishing was real. He looked toward Baco. The work was real. Toward the fishermen, the friendships were real. Toward the villagers, finally toward Zara, and my feelings were real. Her eyes never left his. The honesty in his voice was impossible to fake. For several seconds, the entire world seemed suspended. Then the leader laughed. A mocking laugh, sharp and cruel. Beautiful speech. His smile widened. Unfortunately, speeches solve nothing. Reality crashed back into the moment. The danger remained. The criminals remained. Darius remained captive. The leader stepped closer. This ends tonight. Several armed men moved forward. The villagers tightened their formation. Fear spread visibly, yet nobody retreated. Not one person. The sight stunned even Ace. These people owed him nothing. Yet they stood beside him anyway. Baco moved forward. His weathered face remained calm. You are not taking anyone. The leader smiled. And how exactly will you stop us? Baco glanced around, at the fishermen, the families, the neighbors, the community. Then he answered, together. The single word carried enormous power. The criminals noticed it too. Communities united by loyalty were unpredictable, harder to intimidate, harder to control. The leader's confidence faded slightly. Then his phone rang. The interruption surprised everyone. He frowned, answering immediately. As he listened, his expression changed. Confidence disappeared. Annoyance appeared. Then concern. Real concern. Ace noticed instantly. Something had happened. Something important. The leader ended the call. His jaw tightened. What is wrong? One of his men asked. The answer stunned them. The authorities are coming. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The leader cursed under his breath. How? No one answered. Then a familiar voice emerged. Because I finally sent the files. Everyone turned. Darius stood near the warehouse entrance, free, bruised, exhausted, but free. The sight shocked everyone, including the criminals. Apparently, during the confusion and confrontation, he had escaped. The young man held a small storage device tightly. His hands trembled, yet determination burned in his eyes. "Everything is uploaded," he said. The leader's face turned pale. "You fool!" "No," Darius replied. "I was a fool when I stayed silent." The statement carried unexpected strength. The villagers watched with admiration. The criminals watched with fear. Suddenly, the balance shifted. The men who had seemed powerful moments earlier now looked vulnerable. Exposed, cornered, the distant sound of sirens echoed faintly across the night, growing louder, approaching rapidly. The leader looked around, calculating options, searching for escape, finding none. His operation was collapsing. The evidence existed. Authorities were coming. Witnesses surrounded him. The game was ending. Then his eyes settled on Adrian. Hatred filled them, pure hatred. "This is your fault." Adrian shook his head. "No, Moku." He stepped forward, confident, certain, unafraid. "This happened because you believed nobody would stand against you." The leader said nothing, because deep down he knew it was true. For years, intimidation worked. Fear worked. Corruption worked. Until ordinary people refused. The sirens grew louder. Blue lights appeared in the distance. Several criminals attempted to flee. Others remained frozen. The leader simply stood there, watching everything unravel. Minutes later, authorities flooded the area. Vehicles surrounded the warehouse. Officers secured the scene. Arrests began immediately. The criminal network that had terrorized Darius was finally collapsing. The villagers watched quietly. Relief spread slowly. Not celebration, relief, the kind that follows surviving something terrible. As the chaos settled, Adrian found himself standing alone near the cliffs. The moon remained hidden behind clouds. The ocean continued its endless rhythm, unchanged, unconcerned. Footsteps approached. He already knew who it was. Zara stopped beside him. Neither spoke immediately. The silence felt different now, not tense, not comfortable, uncertain. Finally, Adrian broke it. "I am sorry." Zara stared toward the sea. For which part? The question hurt, because there were many answers. Too many. For lying. She nodded. "That is a good place to start." Adrian accepted the criticism. He deserved it. For several moments, only the ocean spoke. Then Zara surprised him. "I never cared about your money." He looked toward her. She continued, "I cared that you trusted everyone except us." The words struck deeply, because they were true. He had trusted strangers in boardrooms, investors, lawyers, consultants. Yet he hesitated to trust the people who genuinely cared. The realization was painful, necessary, transformative. Zara folded her arms. "Who are you now?" The question sounded familiar, yet different. Not an accusation, an invitation. Adrian looked toward the ocean, the same ocean that taught him humility, patience, perspective. Then he answered honestly, "I do not think I am the man who arrived here." A small smile touched Zara's face, the first smile all night. "Good." The answer offered hope. Not forgiveness, not yet, but hope. And for Adrian, hope meant everything. Still, another challenge waited. Marcus approached from behind. His expression remained serious. The crisis at the warehouse was ending. The crisis elsewhere was not. "We need to talk," Marcus said. Adrian already knew why: the company, the board, the attacks, the unfinished war. Marcus handed him a folder. Inside were documents, reports, photographs, evidence, information collected over weeks. Adrian opened it. His eyes scanned the pages. Then his expression changed. Shock, disbelief, then anger. Deep anger. Marcus watched carefully. "You see it now?" Adrian nodded slowly. The attacks against his company were not random, not financial, not competitive. They were personal. Someone close to him had orchestrated everything. Someone he trusted. Someone inside his inner circle. The betrayal reached farther than he imagined. Farther than Marcus imagined. Farther than anyone imagined. As Adrian stared at the final page, one photograph held his attention. The face staring back at him belonged to a man he had known for over 20 years, a man he once considered family, a man who had secretly been preparing to destroy everything. And suddenly Adrian realized the greatest threat was never hiding in the warehouse. The greatest threat had been waiting inside his own empire all along. The photograph felt heavier than the folder itself. Adrian stared at it beneath the dim light. The face looking back belonged to someone he trusted for decades, someone who celebrated victories beside him, someone who attended family gatherings, someone who helped build the company from the beginning, someone who knew every weakness, every vulnerability, every secret. Marcus watched quietly. He understood the weight of betrayal, especially this betrayal. "Are you certain?" Adrian asked. His voice sounded calm, too calm. Marcus nodded. "The evidence is overwhelming." Adrian looked down again. The name beneath the photograph seemed impossible. Derek Holloway, senior partner, trusted advisor, friend, for over 20 years. The realization cut deeper than any financial attack. Competitors were expected. Enemies were expected. Betrayal from family was different, much different. The ocean roared softly beyond the cliffs. The sound reminded Adrian where he stood, not inside a skyscraper, not inside a boardroom, inside a village that had taught him difficult truths. The most important truth of all: character mattered more than status, loyalty mattered more than power. Marcus closed the folder. "We need to leave soon." Adrian nodded slowly. The words felt inevitable. For weeks he had lived as Ace. Now Adrian Mercer would have to return. The thought filled him with unexpected sadness. Not because he feared responsibility, because he feared losing what he found here. The next morning arrived beneath bright sunshine. The storm clouds were finally gone. The village looked peaceful again. Children laughed near the shoreline. Fishermen prepared their boats. Market stalls reopened. Life moved forward, as life always does. News of the arrests spread quickly. Relief touched every household. People smiled more easily. Conversations felt lighter. The shadow hanging over the community had finally lifted. Yet Adrian carried a different burden. A decision waited. The company needed him. Thousands depended on him. The battle ahead could not be avoided. Late that morning, he found Bacco repairing nets near the docks. The older fisherman worked silently. As always. As Adrian approached, Bacco never looked up. "You are leaving." It was not a question. Adrian smiled faintly. "You always know everything." "No," Bacco adjusted the rope. "Just the obvious things." For several moments neither spoke. The sea breeze drifted across the harbor. Fishing boats rocked gently against the docks. Finally, Adrian sat beside him. "I wanted to thank you." Bacco snorted. "For making you work. For teaching me." The older man remained silent. Adrian continued, "You taught me more than fishing." That finally earned a glance. Bacco studied him carefully, then nodded. A simple gesture, yet meaningful. "You learned because you wanted to learn." The answer stayed with Adrian, because it was true. No lesson mattered until someone became willing to receive it. Later, he walked through the market. People greeted him differently now, not with hostility, not with admiration. Something more complicated. They knew who he was. Yet they also remembered Ace, the fisherman, the worker, the friend. The two identities now existed together. For Adrian, that mattered a great deal. Near midday, Marcus received an urgent call. The expression on his face changed immediately. "What happened?" Adrian asked. Marcus ended the conversation. "Derek called an emergency board meeting." Adrian frowned. "Already? He is moving quickly." The meaning was obvious. Derek sensed danger. He was accelerating his plans. Time was running out. The confrontation could no longer be delayed. By afternoon, preparations began. Transportation had been arranged, documents secured, evidence organized. Everything pointed toward departure. Yet one conversation remained unfinished. The most important conversation. As sunset approached, Adrian walked toward the shoreline. The same place where countless discussions began. The same place where his life started changing. Zara stood near the water, watching the horizon. The golden light reflected across the ocean. Waves rolled gently onto the sand. The scene felt almost unreal. Beautiful, peaceful, fragile. Adrian stopped beside her. Neither spoke immediately. The silence felt familiar now. Comfortable, honest. Finally, Zara broke it. "You are leaving tomorrow." Again, not a question. Adrian nodded. "Yes." She stared toward the sea. "I knew this day would come." "Did you?" A small smile appeared. "You never really belonged here." The statement surprised him because he disagreed. "I think part of me does." Zara looked toward him. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then she smiled, a genuine smile, warm, bittersweet. "Maybe." The answer carried more affection than words. The wind moved gently through her hair. The ocean shimmered beneath the setting sun. Everything about the moment felt unforgettable. Adrian took a slow breath. "I was happier here than I have been in years." The confession surprised even him, yet it felt completely true. No boardroom victory compared, no financial success compared, no luxury compared. Zara listened quietly, then asked the question he feared. "What happens now?" Adrian looked toward the horizon. The answer felt uncertain. "I go back. And I fight for what is right." The simplicity of the statement seemed almost strange. For years he fought for profit, growth, market share. Now the motivation felt different, personal, meaningful, necessary. Zara nodded slowly. "Good." The sun continued sinking, shadows stretched across the beach. The evening grew quieter. Then Zara reached into her bag. She pulled out a small object, a weathered fishing float, simple, handmade, worn by years of use. She handed it to him. "What is this?" "A reminder." Adrian looked at the object carefully. "Of what?" Her eyes met his. "Who you became here." The gift nearly broke him, not because of its value, because of its meaning. No expensive possession he owned felt as important. No award, no trophy, no achievement. Only this small reminder, a symbol of identity, of growth, of belonging. The last rays of sunlight disappeared beyond the horizon. Darkness slowly settled over the ocean. Adrian held the fishing float tightly. Then Zara surprised him one final time. She stepped forward and embraced him. No dramatic words, no promises, no speeches, just honesty, just connection, just a moment neither would ever forget. When they finally stepped apart, neither trusted themselves to speak. The emotions felt too large, too real, too important. As Adrian walked back toward the village, one truth became painfully clear. The battle waiting inside Mercer Industries would determine the future of his company. But the battle inside his own heart had already changed his life forever. Yet unknown to everyone, another surprise was already approaching. Far away in the city, Derek Holloway sat alone inside a private office. A television displayed news coverage of the criminal arrests. Reports connected the investigation to corporate corruption, to hidden financial networks, to powerful people. Derek watched silently, then reached for a locked drawer. Inside rested a thick file. One document remained on top. A document bearing Adrian's name, and a signature that should have been impossible. Derek smiled slowly, because even Adrian Mercer did not yet know the most dangerous truth. The conspiracy against him had begun long before Derek joined it, and the mastermind behind everything was someone Adrian never suspected. The village awakened beneath a brilliant sunrise. Golden light stretched across the ocean. Fishing boats drifted gently near the harbor. Seagulls circled above the shoreline. Everything appeared peaceful, yet inside Adrian Mercer, emotions collided like powerful tides. His departure had finally arrived. The vehicle waiting near the docks felt more like a farewell than transportation. Villagers moved through their morning routines. Some waved, some nodded, some smiled warmly. The previous tension had softened. Trust, once damaged, had begun healing. Not completely, but enough. Adrian carried the weathered fishing float inside his pocket. His fingers touched it occasionally. The small object grounded him, reminded him, protected him from becoming the man he used to be. Marcus waited beside the vehicle. Documents rested neatly inside a leather case. Phones rang constantly, messages continued arriving. The corporate world never slept, never paused, never cared about personal transformation. But Adrian cared now, more than ever. Before leaving, he walked through the village one final time. Every path carried memories, every corner held lessons, every face represented kindness. He remembered his first day, the uncertainty, the exhaustion, the desperation to escape. He remembered Bako teaching him fishing knots, the villagers laughing at his mistakes, the market conversations, the storms, the celebrations, the friendships, the simple beauty of ordinary life. For years, he chased bigger opportunities, bigger profits, bigger victories. Yet happiness had waited in the smallest places. The realization humbled him. Near the docks, Bako stood beside a fishing boat. The older fisherman crossed his arms. His expression remained calm, strong, steady, like the sea itself. Adrian approached slowly. Neither man spoke immediately. Words felt inadequate. Eventually, Bako extended his hand. Adrian accepted it. Their handshake lasted longer than usual, long enough to communicate respect, long enough to communicate gratitude. "Do not forget what you learned," Bako said. Adrian smiled. "I will not." Bako nodded. "Good." The older fisherman looked toward the ocean. "Money changes people." Then he looked directly at Adrian. "Do not let it change you again." The advice landed deeply because it came from someone who expected nothing in return, someone who cared purely because he cared. Adrian promised himself he would remember, always. A crowd gradually gathered near the shoreline, families, friends, neighbors, people who had become part of his life. Their presence touched him more than they realized. Not one of them needed to be there, yet all of them came. The gesture spoke volumes. Then he saw Zara, standing quietly near the water. The morning breeze moved gently through her hair. Sunlight reflected across the ocean behind her. The scene felt timeless. Adrian walked toward her. His heart suddenly felt heavier. This goodbye mattered most. For several moments they simply stood together, watching the waves, listening to the distant calls of seabirds. Neither rushed the silence. Both understood its value. Finally, Zara smiled softly. "You look nervous." Adrian laughed. "I am." "Good." Her smile widened. "That means this matters." The truth of those words struck him immediately. This mattered. More than business, more than reputation, more than success. Because some relationships changed the course of a life. Zara had done exactly that. She studied him carefully, then asked one final question. "Who are you now?" The question echoed their earlier conversations, yet this time the answer came easily. No hesitation, no uncertainty. Adrian looked toward the sea, then back at her. "I am still Adrian Mercer," he smiled, "but I think Ace will always be part of me now." A warm expression appeared in her eyes. The answer pleased her, because it reflected growth, because it reflected truth, because it reflected humility, the qualities she valued most. She stepped forward, then handed him a folded note. "Read it later." Adrian accepted it carefully. The paper felt surprisingly important. "I will." She nodded. Neither needed additional promises. Life would decide the future, not words, not plans, not wishes. The time finally came. Marcus signaled from the vehicle. The journey had to begin. The confrontation waiting in the city could not be delayed any longer. Adrian looked around one final time, at the harbor, at the boats, at the villagers, at the life that transformed him. Then he climbed inside. The vehicle slowly pulled away. People waved. Some smiled, some wiped tears from their eyes. Adrian watched through the window. His own vision blurred slightly. The village gradually disappeared behind him. Yet its impact remained, permanent. Hours later, the city skyline emerged. Towering buildings filled the horizon, traffic crowded the streets, noise replaced waves, concrete replaced sand. The contrast felt shocking, as though he had traveled between different worlds. Mercer Industries' headquarters soon appeared. The massive structure reflected sunlight across polished glass. Employees gathered near the entrance. News crews waited nearby. The atmosphere felt tense, expectant. Word of Adrian's return had already spread. When he stepped from the vehicle, cameras flashed immediately. Questions erupted. Reporters shouted. Security teams formed protective lines. The familiar chaos returned. Yet Adrian felt different. stronger, calmer, clearer. The village had given him perspective, and perspective was powerful. Inside the headquarters, the emergency board meeting was already underway. Executives filled the conference room. Some appeared relieved, others appeared nervous. One face stood out: Derek Holloway, the man who betrayed him, the man who helped orchestrate the attack, the man who believed Adrian remained vulnerable. Derek smiled confidently. That confidence vanished seconds later. Because Adrian entered carrying evidence, facts, documents, truth. The confrontation lasted hours. Secrets surfaced, financial records emerged, hidden communications were exposed, partnerships collapsed, lies unraveled. By the end, Derek sat silently. Defeated, broken, removed from power, the empire survived. The conspiracy collapsed. Justice finally arrived. Weeks passed, then months. Mercer Industries stabilized. Trust slowly returned. Employees regained confidence. Investors returned. Growth resumed. Yet Adrian refused to become the old version of himself. He changed company policies, supported coastal communities, invested in ordinary workers, prioritized people alongside profit. The lessons from the village guided every decision. One evening, after another successful day, Adrian opened Zara's folded note. He had carried it for months, protecting it, waiting for the right moment. The message was simple, short, honest, exactly like her. It read, "Never forget that your greatest success was not building a company. It was becoming someone worth trusting." Adrian sat quietly for a long time. The words touched him deeply, because they captured everything, every lesson, every struggle, every transformation. He looked toward a framed photograph resting on his desk. The village shoreline, fishing boats, the ocean, a place that changed his life forever. Money had given him influence, success had given him recognition, but community had given him purpose, and purpose proved far more valuable. As night settled outside his office window, Adrian smiled, not because he won, not because he became richer, not because he saved his company. He smiled because he finally understood what truly mattered: the people who stand beside you when titles disappear, the people who tell the truth when it hurts, the people who help you become better. Those people are life's greatest treasure, and that lesson would guide him forever. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, your viewing location, and share this video.